any questions so far? No? Okay. So we have a lot to talk about today. Last class we talked about marginal utility per dollar and how whenever you're deciding to do an activity, you should see marginal utility per dollar. If that's greater for an activity, you should do that activity. If marginal utility per dollar for two activities is a tie, then do whatever that has a greater marginal utility. And then we started talking about productivity, that production is turning inputs into outputs, and input is, it could be labor, it could be capital, machinery. Output is equal to quantity. So productivity is equal to quantity produced divided by labor. And then we said that if you decrease labor, keeping quantity constant, then productivity will increase. That's just how fractions work, right? So productivity is equal to quantity divided by labor, right? This is a fraction. If you decrease this, productivity will increase. If you increase the denominator or number of laborers and keeping Q constant, then productivity will decrease. So whenever you increase a denominator in a fraction, keeping the numerator constant, the answer decreases. That's just how fractions work, right? Increase the denominator, productivity will decrease. Decrease the denominator, productivity will increase. Well, what about if you increase the labor or the denominator, but you also increase quantity produced by a lot, more than you increase labor? Is it going to increase or decrease? So increase in quantity is greater than the increase in labor. What's going to happen to productivity?
Increase.
It's going to increase because the quantity increase is greater than the labor increased. The quantity increase, the numerator is increasing more than the denominator. That's just how fractions work. Okay? Everybody get that? Anybody not get that?
That makes sense. Most of it makes sense, but when I'm trying to calculate, that's a problem.
When you try to calculate, we'll do calculations. We'll do more. Okay. So this is what we talked about on Wednesday. We also said that higher productivity leads to higher living standards. Productivity is tied to income, right? That more productive, higher your income. So now, productivity is equals to quantity divided by labor, right? What about marginal productivity or additional productivity? So marginal productivity is additional output or additional quantity or output produced by additional labor. So if you notice that in economics we always come down to marginal. Like there's this regular and then there's marginal. And marginal is always the more significant one. It's always the deciding factor. So whenever we decide about productivity, how much to produce, we're going to look at the marginal one. If marginal productivity, if producing additional unit per worker is a positive or a greater number, then we're going to produce it. If it's a less number or negative number, then we're not going to produce it. Right? So far. So then marginal productivity, MP, is equals to change in quantity divided by change in labor. That's the formula. Regular productivity is quantity divided by labor. Marginal productivity is change in quantity divided by change in labor. How much additional output is being produced by additional employee. For all firms, as they hire more workers, use more inputs, workers' inputs, right? Q divided by L, output divided by input. So for all firms, as they hire more workers, use more inputs, eventually the additional output produced or quantity produced will decline. Now this could be because there are certain numbers of customers. This could be because there are limited numbers of customers. Or hiring more labor can be hazardous. In a manufacturing place. Etc. So imagine that you have a factory that typically can accommodate 10 workers, right? But if you want to increase productivity or whatever, and you say that, you know what, I'm going to hire 20 employees. And it's a small space. It's a space for only 10 workers. So 20 workers in that space are not going to increase productivity. They're just going to irritate each other. It's going to be hot there. You know, the capacity of the room is not that to hold that many people. So in that case, productivity can actually decline. You know. So that's what it's saying. Or it could, if we hire a lot of people, then what could happen is that you could have limited numbers of customers, and whatever they're producing or how much they're producing might not even be of use. So for all firms, as they hire more workers, more inputs, eventually additional output produced will be declined. This is called law of diminishing marginal productivity. This phenomena of as you hire more workers, productivity will decline. This phenomena is called law of diminishing marginal productivity. Or another word for this is law of diminishing marginal returns. Law of diminishing marginal returns. Meaning, as you're producing more, the marginal return you're getting on the product is diminishing, is decreasing. The return you're getting on each additional product is decreasing. So they're both the same thing. Law of diminishing marginal productivity or law of diminishing marginal return. Where else did we have this diminishing law? Just previous chapter, right? When we were talking about the law of diminishing marginal utility, that as you consume more and more, your utility or satisfaction gradually declines. It was similar concept, right? Okay. So this is the law of diminishing marginal productivity is particularly true in the short run. This is true in the short run. As more labor is hired, productivity decreases. Now it's important to keep in mind the short run and long run, because as we move forward, right now we're talking about short run, we're going to be talking about long run as well. And I'll tell you exactly what's the time frame for a short run, what's the time frame for a long run. But in the short run, as we hire more labor, productivity decreases, and that's called the law of diminishing marginal utility. With me so far?
Utility or productivity?
What?
Okay, the last thing, what did you say?
Law of diminishing marginal productivity
Okay.
says that in short run, as we hire more worker, productivity decreases. Right? Okay. So this is productivity, which is quantity divided by labor. This is marginal productivity, change in quantity divided by change in labor. Marginal cost And I think we talked about marginal cost before, marginal benefits, marginal cost. Marginal cost is cost of producing each additional unit. Cost of producing each additional unit. Marginal cost is equal to change in total cost divided by change in quantity. When marginal productivity is increasing, getting more from each worker, what's happening is marginal cost is going down. When marginal productivity is decreasing, getting less from each worker,